Hey everyone, it's Ganassi, and welcome back to Spinning the Tires. Sorry, the studio's a little more sparse today. The 88 Dale Jr. sign got knocked over by clumsy old me, so just trying to work on the frame of that, and I'll get that back up in the studio here as soon as possible. But anyway, we've got a lot of news to cover this week. Lots of great things happening the past week, a great race, and some very surprising news. So all of that coming right up. Let's dive into it. Alright, so to start, I want to focus on the race from this past weekend at Road America, but I'm not going to spend as much time on it because I want to devote most of this episode to two massive blockbuster pieces of news that came in the past week. So, probably one of NASCAR's biggest news weeks in a while, but let's focus on the Road America race. So, it was a good race. I think it was like the fifth road course race this season, 5th out of 7. We still got the Indianapolis road course and Charlotte Roval left to go, and it was a good race. It wasn't quite as crazy as a lot of the past Xfinity Series races have been there, but it was still a good race. Chase Elliott won, which was impressive. He drove from the back of the field where he had to start all the way up to the front, held that lead for about, I think, 10 laps at the end, maybe more than that, but it was fun. Good cast characters took the lead during the race. I think Kyle Busch led a bit, which was impressive because he also was starting in the back. Matt DiBenedetto and Austin Cindric got to show a little bit of what they had when they took the lead for a while in stage 2. Different guys leading throughout the race. Some unfortunate incidents for a few people, like Daniel Suarez, who had a transmission issue very similar to one at Circuit of the Americas. Other than that, not a ton of incidents. I mean, plenty of spins around the track, it being such a large and tough course, but one of the most notable spins being when Kyle Larson got spun around in the final laps of the race, accidentally by his teammate Alex Bowman. So Bowman afterwards, I think, cut a tire, had to make it to pit road, so they didn't bring out the caution. But yeah, very, very interesting turn of events in the final laps. So, but yeah, overall good race. NASCAR's first time in a while racing on July 4th. It was a great 4th of July, a great way to spend it, I thought, with the race. So overall, pretty fun. What impressed me, maybe even more than the racing, was the fan facility. Not because of how packed in they could get everyone and how organized it was, but kind of actually, this sounds weird, but kind of how disorganized and casual everything seemed. You see, throughout the week, there's this theme of racing through the woods and past all these fans that are scattered across the track. Well, that track is 4 miles long, and it is in the woods of Wisconsin, so it was so cool. I was hearing about people who were saying, you could just walk in the woods right next to the racetrack and hear the cars go by and still enjoy nature at the same time. It was, it sounded like a pretty cool setting, especially because I'm a very outdoorsy person. Sounds like my kind of racetrack. I think I kind of want to go to the Road America race next year, but I was pretty impressed by what it looked like the fan experience was this weekend. Mostly looked pretty full capacity, so that's great to see in Wisconsin. But now, just a quick look at the race weekend ahead. It's at Atlanta. Some more to cover on Atlanta later, but overall, I'd expect it to be an okay race, like most Atlanta races these days are. Last time was actually pretty good. Ryan Blaney passed Kyle Larson in the final laps of the race for the win, so it's had some good finishes the past few years. Now, moving on from race reviews and previews now, several big pieces of news to cover. First, I want to cover a little smaller one. NASCAR has discontinued the NASCAR Pro Invitational Series now. I quite frankly think that's a good thing. Now, the Pro Invitational Series for a while, it was groundbreaking. It was excellent. NASCAR was using the iRacing platform, which is used by a lot of racers for simulations of tracks. They were using it to conduct virtual racing in the first few months before they hit the track again, after the pandemic hit the United States. And it was pretty fun, weekly racing in the approximate time slot the race from that weekend would take. And there were some good moments. But eventually, they brought it back this year. They didn't really need to, though, because full in-person racing was back. So yeah, it had been excellent the first year, but this last year it had gotten kind of disorganized. It was just getting a little too casual, a little too kind of goofy, and I don't know, just not quite as enjoyable. There were still some fun races. James Davison won the iRacing title at the end of the year. He won the races at both Circuit of the Americas and Chicago Street Course on iRacing. Now, I will hand it to him. The Chicago Street Course race this year was really cool. They were able to test that idea out, and also they were able to test the next gen car out. So some cool elements that got incorporated into this, but overall I think this is a timely end to it. So NASCAR drivers can go do iRacing all they want, but broadcasting it on TV, it got a little goofy. But now let's move on to the next couple big pieces of news. First of all, news just released yesterday, because being on the topic of Atlanta and iRacing and so on, Atlanta Motor Speedway, following this weekend's race, they're going to start repaving it, and they're going to reconfigure it. And this is going to be quite a reconfigure, complete overhaul. They're going to change the track from about 55 feet wide in the turns. Width will remain the same on the front straightaway approximately. But in the turns, they're narrowing it from 55 degrees down to 40. And that'll tighten up the racing groove a bit. The apron also is going to be a little more banked, but the big thing is the turns themselves. These 40-foot wide turns, as opposed to today's 24-degree turns in Atlanta, is going to be 28 degrees. This is kind of crazy. This is banking that is closer to the banking of Daytona, a super speedway, than the banking of the Atlanta we're currently running. And the current Atlanta has quite a bit of banking. It's pretty steep. So just think about that. NASCAR is essentially creating its first ever cross of an intermediate half-mile track and a super speedway. This is a weird idea. I knew they would reconfigure the track eventually, but I didn't know this was where they were going with it. And it seems kind of fun. I'm not going to lie. I would like to go see this race next year just to see how the new car handles on it. I think it's going to be a really fun circuit. I don't share that opinion with every fan, but it's going to be cool. I'm not going to lie. I really think so. I think part of it's going to make the racing groove a little narrower, making 3 and 4 wide moves a little more bold and daring. If you slip up the track, lose grip, you won't have as much insurance before you hit that wall. It's going to make it a little more, well, I shouldn't say more challenging track because of how worn out the Atlanta track is right now. It's one of the most challenging we have, but it's going to be very challenging. And something weird I kind of noted about this track, I didn't see many other people say this, but this is kind of interesting. This looks to be one of the first new tracks, besides road courses and street circuits, NASCAR has kind of designed using iRacing. From what it sounded like from Atlanta Motor Speedway's like press releases and so on, they worked with iRacing through all this for about 10 months behind the scenes, trying to figure out different track configurations and what might work. So apparently this new configuration was basically generated on iRacing, NASCAR's official simulator. So we'll see how that goes, because the benefit of that is they never had to interfere with the current track while they were at that. They didn't have to just go in blind and say, okay, we're going to repave the track and hope this is good. They actually had a bit of, albeit virtual, but they had a bit of something to go off of without, as they said, having to turn a shovel of dirt. So that was a big benefit. So now they can just get right out there, go right to work, and know exactly what they're doing and what they're looking for. On the other hand, it is virtual. NASCAR tested it out on there. It appeared to do good, but it is virtual. The physics are very close, but they're not exactly the same as the real world. But I think they're close enough that I'm going to trust them. I think there's going to be a lot of good racing here. I think with the way the next gen car will handle, probably a little lower horsepower, this could wind up looking a little bit like a miniature super speedway race. I think that's kind of what they're going for, honestly. And I think it could be fun. I really do. I'm looking forward to this reconfiguration of Atlanta. So we'll see where that goes. Now for the second huge piece of news. All right, so we've heard about Trackhouse Racing this year. Daniel Suarez's new team this year, owned by Justin Marks and Pitbull of all duos to own a team. But they are expanding next year, and they are expanding in an unexpected way. From the start of a few months ago, they were kind of expected to expand to 2 cars. But that kind of got interfered with when Colleague Racing announced that they were going to be entering the Cup Series next year because they got Trackhouse Racing's current charter for them. A charter basically is just something a team owns that guarantees them a starting spot in the race. And Colleague Racing essentially was sold Trackhouses. So that left Trackhouse without any guaranteed spot in next year's races. So they went and did kind of the unthinkable, the wildest thing ever. They went and bought Chip Ganassi Racing, a NASCAR race-winning team, current drivers Kurt Busch and Ross Chastain. They just went and bought the team. And they bought both their charters, obviously, as well. And they acquired their race garage, all their assets with the next-gen car, and so on. Bold, bold move. Chip Ganassi said he didn't have the team for sale, but that Justin Marks, owner of Trackhouse, just came to him and kind of laid out his vision for what he would like the team to look like. And Chip was like, his vision, it's a lot more long-term than mine, it'll be better for the team, so he agreed to sell it. Now, Chip Ganassi Racing is going to continue to exist in places like IndyCar and the IMSA Sports Car Series, but they won't be around in NASCAR anymore. And this leads to some interesting speculation. Where will the two drivers from Chip Ganassi Racing land? Because Daniel Suarez has been guaranteed a spot for Trackhouse next year. But what about the second car? There's one car. It can hold one driver, of course. But now you got two drivers without a job. Both of them probably want that Trackhouse seat. So we'll see. I kind of hope Ross Chastain gets that ride, and here's why. I think Kurt Busch, he's been offered a spot with 2311 Racing. I think he should take that up. He'll be working with Denny Hamlin, who is someone closer to his age and experience level, and they can sort of just work on the car together, work with Bubba Wallace, make that team better. I don't think he's a good play for Trackhouse. Here's why. Trackhouse is a young team, somewhat young owners. They've got a great young driver with them, too. I think Kurt Busch moving in would not be a good move because he just kind of changed the whole dynamic of all of it. Maybe not in a good way. And he wouldn't be a long-term play. He's probably got 1 or 2 years left until Kurt Busch finally retires. So I think if Trackhouse is looking for something long-term here that they can build success off of, they should go with Ross Chastain, great young talent, rather than Kurt Busch, who is not going to last more than a few years in NASCAR probably, and again, would be a short-term play for a team. So I think next year, I really hope so. Really hope that we get a Ross Chastain and Daniel Suarez driver lineup. As for what number the second car will run and what sponsors there will be, that is yet to be determined. A lot of people kind of hoping that the Trackhouse Racing keeps Ross Chastain's number 42. Some people saying something like the 91 or 97. 97 would be good if Kurt Busch moved into that ride because that was his number for years. When he first started his career, so we will see. And I think this is you're gonna see this happen a little bit, especially with a younger Jeff Gordon moving in to assume an ownership role at Hendrick Motorsports. I think you're gonna see younger guys starting their own teams, moving up to Cup, and then buying out these older teams with owners that are, limited in years and can only own that team for so long. So I think you're gonna see more of this in the future. Maybe not a lot of it. But new teams buying old ones, old teams coming under new ownership. I think you'll see this trend in the next 5-10 years as guys like Roush Fenway, Rick Hendrick, maybe even Richard Petty sort of move out of the sport. So anyway, plenty of interesting news to go over this week. And until next week, and who knows what crazy news there will be to review next week, you all have a great week, great weekend. Enjoy the Atlanta race, and I will see you next time on Spinning the Tires.